days away from the finale of the U.S. elections. The outcome of this historic moment looms large over a world in turmoil. The election of either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris may reshape the geopolitical landscape, from conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon to tensions with Iran and China. With a struggling economy and rising unemployment, the next president's decisions will both define America's role as a global power and determine the fates of millions entangled in conflicts worldwide. Welcome to our special coverage of the U.S. elections.
We will build what I call an opportunity economy.
We will make America great.
We're ready to fight for it. As one people, we are moving forward.
We will make America safe again.
Former United States President Donald Trump has claimed he entered the race to save the U.S. economy from obliteration. These statements came during a rally in Salem, Virginia. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin joined Trump on stage, encouraging residents to support Trump, saying that Trump will help the country recover the greatest economy in the world. Supporters of Republican nominee Donald Trump have participated in a car parade in Maricopa County, Arizona. Departing from Morristown and heading to Phoenix, they displayed Trump flags and campaign decorations, honking and cheering along the 90-kilometer route. With the election just 3 days away, they urged fellow Republicans and undecided voters to cast their ballots for Trump. As the presidential election nears, Americans are poised for a potentially historic decision. Trump campaigns with aggressive rhetoric and promises of retribution, while Harris presents a message of inclusion, appealing to voters despite some viewing her as high risk. Both candidates are focusing on critical battleground states, where victories may be decided by razor-thin margins. The election's polarized landscape underscores a pronounced gender gap and shifts in voter demographics. With turnout crucial for success, both candidates face the challenge of engaging undecided voters in the final days, intensifying the stakes for an already charged election night. In a discussion on the potential impact of a second Trump term, conservative columnists in the New York Times have highlighted Trump's surprising electoral strength and the evolving policies of the GOP. However, they also point out Trump's history of electoral losses and his departure from traditional conservative values. The columnists of American newspapers raise concerns about the toxicity of the MAGA movement, emphasizing its demand for loyalty to election falsehoods. All three grapple with the uncertainties surrounding foreign policy under either a Trump or a Harris presidency. They consider how a Trump victory might reignite cultural conflict, while a Harris win could lead to a redefined conservatism. Ultimately, there is a cautious hope for the post-Trump GOP that embraces more traditional conservative principles and effective governance. To help us analyze the situation, we're joined by Dr. Tamara Bro, an academic and political researcher joining us from Beirut to discuss the potential scenarios following the 2024 U.S. elections, considering the implications of either Trump or Harris winning on the global conflicts, especially here in the Middle East. Thank you for joining us, firstly. Let's start off with considering Trump's past decisions. How likely is he to re-evaluate U.S. commitments to NATO if he wins the elections?
Congratulations and greetings to all. If you look at Kamala Harris, she will still continue defending Israel, the Israeli policies, and indeed, she has even claimed officially that Israel has the right for self-defense and is illegitimate in working on maintaining its situation on the ground. In fact, Harris has also said that no matter what situation on the ground, the humanitarian crisis will not dictate any change on the Israeli policies. On the other hand, when if Iran comes into play, this does not mean that there will be any change except opening a new front. And according to President Biden, in fact, this is typically within the realm of the democratic policy in the Middle East. In fact, it is a fact that the logistics show that Iran will certainly be an important player as a stakeholder in the region, and maybe this could shift the balance of power to the better but according to the 2021 predictions, there had been a small shift in relation between Iran and Biden administration. And I believe that it is important that both countries, with Iran and Israel, have to work hand in hand in improving their policy with
Okay,
Gulf states.
so if we could look, you spoke about Iran and Asia and all of that, but now let's move further into Asia. How do the candidates differ on the issue of China and Taiwan, and what might be the consequences of their different approaches to the world economy as a whole?
I must say that China is following very closely the election. For them, whether it's Trump that comes to the presidency or Harris, probably the policy will not change towards China. China remains very set on following the same policies, and it's sort of a stubborn insistence on maintaining a status quo in the relations. And of course, China does not want to lose its grip on the power on in the East. And when there was pressure from the American side on imposing heavy custom duties on products from China that would be imported into the U.S., and the problem related to Huawei that was put aside and was cast out from many of the 5G network, and shows that in the light of several crises, this has really affected the Chinese market in the U.S. And I must say that according to the declarations of the Donald Trump, the statement was that Taiwan remains one of the mainstays of the situation in the Asian East and Southeast East. And I don't know that if Kamala Harris would change that position either. So it all seems that we're running towards the same implementation of policies without change, at least without drastic changes. And there will be a continuation, of course, between the Taiwanese and the Chinese that will be under the auspices of the U.S., whether under the auspices of this president or the other president. This also calls for a strong military presence by the Americans in the East, and TSMC also was one of the main companies that is producing a lot of electronics that are crucial to the U.S. economy and industry. And this, and according to Trump, if he wins, he says that the preservation of TSMC remains one of the mainstays of the policy, because it is such a crucial element in the industry that it cannot do without. And of course, And of course, when you talk of imposing heavy custom duties of reaching up to 200% on
Yes.
Chinese imports, these are certainly very drastic measures that will curtail much of the aspects of the economy and mutual trade between the countries. And this is, of course, if you talk about the South China Sea, I don't think that Trump was particularly concerned as that at the time. Things may change now, given that the position situation in 2024 might be different in 2024. But Joe Biden, at least when he was in power, he still is anyway. He would right to maintain an alliance with the Philippines and with many Southeast Asian countries to improve the position, the military presence, at least of the American on such territories. There were also
Yes.
other alliances with Australia, with even the UK to maintain a grip on the South China Sea, and this is moving towards the east, is an important element of the U.S. economy policies that have to be applied there. And furthermore, I must say that the relations between the U.S. and several Asian countries have improved under Biden. This may show some sort of a shift, not a paradigm one, but certainly a shift in the policies and and I remember that Moody's prediction of the improvement in trade with the Southeast Asian countries between the U.S. and these countries is certainly an important element that would certainly cause a major improvement in the balance of trade between these countries and the U.S. And of late, we have also seen how China has been putting pressure by improving, for instance, its line of electronic processors that may prove to be particularly
If
important
I could
in
sort
the
of like
economy.
cut you off there, because I understand that you're trying to say the differences between the two countries in general when it comes to, or the differences between rather the two candidates. But do you think, other than the political aspect of it all, that it comes down to the economic policies? They're pretty much the same. Yes, during the Biden administration, and Harris seems to want to carry it on, they've slapped tariffs on EVs, for instance, when it comes to China. But then again, Trump, I mean, it's not specifically for China, but he's more of an isolationist and he's more interested in American-made products. So it would still, influence, I suppose, China and the world as a whole, not just China, because other countries also will be affected by, the idea of American-made and tariffs being slapped onto them because of this reasoning.
The Sino-American relations, whether it's Harris who wins or Trump wins, I must say that there has been lots of to and fro movement, ebbing and this means that that shows that China remains an important trade partner of the United States. The sheer size of the market is huge, and there is no doubt that America wants to remain the main stakeholder in the trade balance between the two countries. And whether again the Democrats take the lead or the Republicans take the lead, I don't think that there will be any change, at least in the economical aspects of these relations. Take, for instance, the issue of Taiwan. Taiwan remains, as I said, an important stakeholder, and Taiwan may be a pawn on the chessboard in the game of power between China and the States. But then the unwavering support of the U.S. for Taiwan means a lot. And if you are talking about custom duties, I think that Harris will continue the current policy of imposing further duties, custom duties, high custom duties on Chinese importers. we're talking of a trade balance of $575 billion per year. And Kamala Harris will certainly not gamble with this at all. And once again, the issue of microelectronics and transistor manufacturing by TSMC, by Taiwan, remains an important mainstay of the trade balance between the Chinese side, the American side, and eventually that market. I must say that the territorial dispute with the U.S. over that party will certainly mean that you can actually compare this to how the U.S. is supporting Israel unequivocally in in the Gaza Strip and in the war of Lebanon. So this means that when you talk of economics, you really talk of something that imposes very strict political measures and policies that have to be implemented. Look at for example, what is happening with Hamas and other countries from the Gulf state, from the Emirates and the Saudi King KSA, and I mean. This shows once again, how far the relations between the U.S. and Israel are intimate, and if we talk about the diplomatic shuttle, there has always been a favorable outcome in favor of Israel and against the Arab countries. When you talk this of the negotiation table, and in many cases, people have suggested the two-state solution. Unfortunately, the states have been trying to avoid this as much as possible because it would certainly harm Israel's position on the ground, and its territorial grip would be severely affected. And this is creating further chaos in the conflict in the Middle East, and of course, there have been attempts at mediation from KSA, from Iran, but unfortunately, the Palestinians are not willing to accept this because this means that
Yes.
that these pressures are not eventually equating to a final
Well,
solution
we
on the
we
ground.
can sort of like get into the idea of how much the current administration is close to the Israeli side, or Trump's closeness to the Israeli side as well. But we're going to have to take a bit of a break there from this topic. Before we continue, let's take a look at this report about the potential outcomes of a Trump or Harris presidency. So stay with us.
As the U.S. approaches its pivotal 2024 elections, the stakes are high, not just domestically, but on the global stage. With Donald Trump and Kamala Harris vying for the presidency, their differing approaches to foreign policy could reshape the Middle East's tumultuous landscape. If Trump wins, he may adopt a hardline stance on Iran, continuing sanctions and military posturing, while providing increased military support to Israel, potentially worsening regional conflicts. His focus on decisive victories over groups like Hamas might alienate Arab American voters and strain U.S. relations in the Middle East. His approach to China could shift toward heightened tariffs and trade wars, impacting global markets. Conversely, a Harris presidency might emphasize diplomacy and humanitarian aid, as she has called for a ceasefire and expressed concern over civilian casualties. However, her connection to Biden's policy may not satisfy critics to demand substantial changes in U.S. support for Israel. This could result in disillusionment among progressive voters and Arab communities. On the economic front, both candidates face the challenge of a recovering U.S. economy still reeling from the pandemic's impact. With inflation concerns and unemployment lingering, their foreign policy decisions will also affect domestic economic stability. A conflict escalation in the Middle East could strain resources further, complicating recovery efforts. Ultimately, both candidates' paths hold significant implications for U.S. foreign policy and economic stability amidst rising tensions with China and ongoing crisis in Taiwan.
Welcome back. Dr. Tamara, before the report, you talked about the idea of how the Biden administration shows unwavering support for Israel. But if you could also give us an idea about your opinion, how could a Trump presidency affect the U.S.-Israeli relations, especially in light of the recent events taking place in Gaza and Lebanon? He has also obviously said that he supports Israel's right to defend itself, but he critiqued Israel somewhat when it comes to how they've handled the situation in the last year.
Whoever will win, if it's Kamala or Trump, I believe they will all try to reach a ceasefire. The war cannot go on indefinitely, and this means, and if the war comes to end, both parties will go into long extended talks with Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a ceasefire, at least in the early stage. But then there is also a new front between Iran and Israel that calls for a different confrontation at a level that would go certainly beyond the normal borders of Israel, and this far-fetching war may actually have its toll on the entire region, if not the entire Middle East. And I must say, the U.S. may have its own ability to press on, to apply pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu, but then what would happen with the situation between Israel and Israel? Furthermore, let me say that Iran has said a couple of months ago that the West has unfortunately betrayed Iran and is putting Iran at the forefront of the responsibility for staging a third front open with Israel, and therefore we see that in the actual confrontation between Trump and Harris, there has been no consensus on this, and eventually, whether if you talk about the pressure of Netanyahu on the front with Lebanon, on the front with Gaza, or on the front even with Iran, and therefore these are increasing tensions in the area, and these frictions are leading to a further escalation of the event. And I believe that there will be further pressure there will certainly be a lot of pressure from the new administration, whichever wins, from the U.S. on coming to terms with a ceasefire at whatever cost. Furthermore, there is the Zionist lobby in the U.S. is certainly supporting both candidates for the U.S. elections, which means that the winner will mean that they have to abide by the rules of the Zionist lobby, no matter what, given that this is an important game changer.
Yeah, but as you've said, that the possibility, regardless of who wins, whether it's Harris or Trump, most likely the ceasefire is near. If someone comes into office soon, they will definitely pressure the Israeli side into taking a ceasefire deal. But when it comes to Harris, since you talked a bit about Trump right there, when it comes to Harris himself, what specific policy changes might we see when it comes to Harris if she wins, in comparison to the previous administration when it comes to Biden, regarding the humanitarian situation in Gaza? Biden seems to have, sort of been unwavering when it comes to the Israeli side, hasn't pressured the Israeli side enough to let in, humanitarian aid, for instance, in Gaza. Do you think Harris will try to distance herself from what the Biden administration did during the last year?
No, I don't agree. In my opinion, Harris is a strong supporter of the Jewish lobby and Israel. In fact, same applies to Trump. They are both almost swearing an allegiance to the Israeli side, and And of course, this is an important card that has to be used in on the negotiating table, because it means that if there is any confrontation during a possible negotiation, if there is a need, for instance, to put some pressure on the American Congress so as to be favorable for Israel, it would certainly pass whatever decision have to be taken in favor of Israel. The same cannot be said about the Palestinians. But
Yes.
there has been some sort of an autocracy on the Biden side
Yes.
with this.
Dr. Tamara, unfortunately, we're sort of out of time for this special coverage, but thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for giving us your insights. That was Dr. Tamara Bro, an academic and political researcher, joining us from Beirut. Thank you so much for your insights. That brings us to the end of our special coverage. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. For real-time updates, connect with us on the UMS digital platform. Watch it. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Q.